Hey guys, welcome to our mixed media moods for April of 2019. We're going to work with this gorgeous pink board that Jen has supplied us with. I love the top left, the middle, the top right, the bottom right, so much going on. I'm going to work on this project called In the Earliest. It's a wall hanging. I think I was sort of channeling my friend Fiona when I did this. She does the most amazing wall hangings. And as I was looking for supplies that aided the mood board or complemented the mood board, the first thing I picked up was this muslin calico, 100% cotton fabric that I brought back from Australia. And then, so I think that also had to do with fee. And then these three cards, they are watercolor substrates that come from my Mad Matter workshop that I've been co-teaching with Tina Walker. Speaking of, real quick, we did just release 2 new editions of Mad Matter, so you can join me and Tina and do a whole big dye pot weekend. It's 3 days, and we're doing it at the end of August, so August 30, 31, September 1 here in Vegas for 2019, and then in February of 2020 we'll be back over in Pennsylvania. Check out the My Classes portion of my website, or just message me to get in touch with me about the information for that workshop. So those cards, those watercolor cards, the reason they're already done or look like they are is because they're leftovers from that workshop. So they have been eco-dyed, hand-dyed watercolor pieces, and I just trimmed them down to size so that they were all uniform. I ripped this piece of calico, and that is sitting on my desk where I can sort of play with these cards on top of it. I traced the card placement, and then I'm using some gesso now, Liquitex gesso, as a background element for these cards. So I have taken the gesso all the way to the edge where the cards will be, and then sort of extended it beyond that border. It's going to help anchor the cards to the fabric. So just visually anchor them rather than having these cards sort of free floating on this fabric. And I am heating it dry so that I can move on quickly. But also, when I start to add other design elements to this project, the gesso is going to react differently to all of those pieces than the fabric. So that's going to add really well to the mixed media feel and this just sort of play time that I'm having here. I'm using some gel medium just to hold those cards specifically in place, and just a little bit in the exact middle there. And it also gave me a chance to sort of look at both sides of the card and decide exactly which one I was going to go with, because the dye pot did change on either side. So held that down, and then I used my machine to stitch around and keep those cards into place. So they have a little bit of gel medium, and then I've stitched them in place with a straight stitch, and then in some places I turned it into a zigzag stitch. And then I'm going to use my Tim Holtz tiny attacher. I'm adding in some metal elements, and it's also bringing in that sort of gray color that was in the mood board, and I really loved this off-white, pink, gray, white, black, like beauty that's coming together, that's happening here. After I'm done with the tiny attacher, I've used my Unwow Studios squirt bottle to add a little water to some gesso, and then I'm splattering it around the piece. I do a lot of splatters. I love them. I don't think I could ever work without them. I'm going to do a little bit of mark making here, so I'm using the inside cardboard roll of some packing tape, and then the inside plastic of some washi tape. So one really big circle and then this sort of double ring. I actually don't end up loving the double ring, and it's okay because it is at this point a background portion, and I know that I'm going to cover it up really soon. I wanted to try it, and I wasn't a huge fan, but that's all right. On the right hand side, I'm using my number 2 pencil, and I am adding in some mark making in these really faint sort of distressed lines. You can use any pencil you like. The harder it is, the lighter it will be, and I have all kinds of pencils. Number 2 pencils, Derwent pencils, architecture pencils, you know, sketching, illustration, lots of different pencils, and I just keep them to the side. More often than not, I reach for my number 2 because it's more like an HB, so it's a hard, soft. It's right in the middle. And if I use it lightly, I can write lightly, or if I press hard, it gets nice and dark. And I'm using some vintage text and just piling it up and making a little miniature collage here. At this point, I wasn't sure exactly where it was going to go. I just for sure was covering up that mark that I didn't like. And it's okay because I know that it's under there, and I'm covering up some of that die pot markings on the background, and then also some of the Tim Holtz tiny attacher that I put in, and it's okay. So as an artist, I'm trying to embrace the fact that it is okay to cover things up, and I do have to remind myself of that pretty frequently, but it's okay. I just remind myself that it's okay to cover things up, that it's all part of the process and it's all part of the layers. And I glued that down with some Yoo-Hoo. Well, I stitched it together and then glued it down with some Yoo-Hoo. And then it's kind of funny. At first I thought, oh, I must not have used Stabilo on this project, which would be the first time in a really long time. But I did. I scribbled it on my underpaper, added some water, and then splattered that around. Again, bringing in more of that gray tone, those gray colors that are happening in the bottom right-hand side of the mood board. And then I added a little bit more water to tone it down even more, and then splattered that as well. Now I'm using my Tim Holtz piercer, and you can use any piercer, any type of awl or anything you might have for bookbinding. I use it to pre-punch holes for my stitching. So I don't always do this. It depends on what I'm stitching on. But in this case, it's really important to me that I help take care of my hands because I know that I'm going to be using them for a very long time into my future. And not just everyday stuff, of course, but because I spend so much time creating, I need them to be at their optimal, to be, to be the best they can be. And so it's really hard on my hands to push these leather needles through so many layers because I have the fabric, and then I have gesso, and then I have card, and then maybe in some places there's stitching. And so by pre-piercing the holes, I'm really aiding not only in keeping my hands from hurting, but also the creation process, because I'm not getting tired and spending too much time trying to force the needle through. I just go through my pre-guided holes, and I just punch a couple and sort of keep in mind I might want a little cross here, I might want a little straight stitch, and I might want a little French knot. And I'm just sort of filling in that bottom corner. So using it as a design element, I'm carrying the stitches across from the card to the calico, back and forth and back and forth, and sort of just creating like a little splatter of my favorite stitches. And it turns out really nice. I really enjoy it. I just happen to have this color of DMC embroidery floss. I inherited sort of a big bag, and it has some really crazy cool colors in it that I might not buy normally myself. So that's really nice. This is some Umwow Studio Sari ribbon, and I'm using just some little Tim Holtz scissors to clip the edge, and then I rip it the rest of the way. And I started doing this, and I really love it. I make these little clusters of this Sari silk. So once you start layering things up like this, and little, like the behind layers start peeking out of the sides, it's really so awesome. And because this sari is recycled, it's already sort of haggard on the edges and very distressed. And then by layering it up, it really adds to that effect. And it's so cool. It ends up really fluffy, and it really has a nice 3D element. And then again, I did pre-punch my holes for that, and I ended up French knotting those. So 3 little tiny pink French knots hold that in place. And I'm going to clip my back ends here. I don't always clip my threads, but in this case, it proved beneficial while I was sort of bringing some stitching through and working on some pieces still. I'm using that number 2 pencil again to bring back some more of the gray elements and add in some sketchy, sort of just scribbly type effects. And then now I am going through my stash of Italian driftwood. I live in the desert. I love driftwood so much, but I live in the desert, so I don't have access to it. Sometimes I'll pick up sticks from the yard or, the park or anything like that, but driftwood has a whole beautiful different aspect to it because it's been soaking in water and it's washed up on the beach or, you know, on the riverbed, and it's just really beautiful and just has this whole different feel to it than being fresh fallen from a tree. So I picked this up off Etsy, Italian driftwood, and I am using a Sharpie to do some mark making and then heating that dry. And I know that I want it to be on top of that cluster of vintage text, but I also want to introduce the gray color a bit better to this specific card. So I have gone through my pack of dye pot stuff, and again from the Mad Matter workshop, and look at this sari. So it's the same Wow Studio sari that is in the bottom right hand corner, but it's just been eco dyed, and it is amazing. Immersion / eco dyed. We do use all natural products when we dye, so nobody's going to get sick or anything like that. But I use some gel medium to layer that up, and it turns out really, really, really beautiful. And you can see here I'm sort of playing with composition, and that is a big part of my process. I usually do have sort of a plan moving forward, or I know in the next few steps I'd like to ... but I also like to test things out and see how they'll look in different compositions. This lace here, this is a gift from Michelle Kostiolek, and it is glorious. So it's kind of like eyelet lace. It's on muslin or something very similar. It's very thin, and then it has this gorgeous embroidery on it. And so I adhered it to the back of my card, and then I wrapped it around, and using gel medium, I applied the gel medium to only the embroidered areas where that thread was really thick and could hold up really well to the glue. And then that way it didn't soak through the thinner areas of fabric, and it still has that sort of dainty femininity to it on the left-hand side. I used some Yoo-Hoo to adhere in the earliest, which is just a little text piece I found. I glued that to the stick in the center, and then now I'm bringing back an oldie but a goodie favorite of mine, masking tape. So I've been concentrating on this a lot lately, specifically using masking tape as a design element because I love everything about it. I love how raw it is. I love how it's plastic. I love how things react different on top of it. I love that it's adhesive. I love the color. It's got that vintage distressed kind of tan tone to it. And I love that I can get it in different sizes. So I've been concentrating on using it as a design element more towards the end rather than a background piece in the beginning. And I love it. I love it so much. So I'm using it to go off the edge of the card. I'm using it in small areas. I'm layering it. I'm setting pieces next to each other. And it is certainly, in this aspect, more of a design element rather than a supply that just holds my page together. I got out another pencil, so it's just a mechanical pencil this time. The lead's a little bit harder, and so it doesn't leave behind such dark lines, and I'm using that to sketch in and add some marks all around my project, both on the outside of the card and the inside. And then I also mimicked that eyelet sort of embroidery lace that was on the left hand side. And then I did decide that it's a wall hanging, so I'm going back in with some of that sari ribbon from Wow Studio and some golden gel medium, and then just attaching that so that it has two hangers on it. And that's it. So we're all done here, and I love this piece. It turned out way different than I thought it was going to, but it has some really, really great elements to it. It reads really nicely, and I'm excited to have shared it with you. So make sure you guys pop over and see Jen. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'll be sure to respond. Lots of great layers, lots of awesome textures, just good stuff happening here. Please subscribe for more videos. I always love having you around, and I'll see you again. Thanks. Bye.